Oh, he's starting to record. Let me just post the recording.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Once again, for those of you who've just joined the call, we are just waiting for everybody to log in before we get started. We'll be starting the session in just a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, feel free to click the Q&A and submit any questions you might have that we can talk about at the end of the session. And we also have the chat going live throughout the session as well. Thank you. All right, well, it's just past 3 o'clock here in Seoul. Welcome everybody to this RDI Worldwide seminar on the topic of how to manage remote teams. I hope that we might have some guests with us in other countries. We'll see how that works out throughout the session. Today session, how to manage remote teams, is going to be led by Eric Wan. He is our principal consultant here at RDI Worldwide. For those of you who don't know, RDI Worldwide is originally a British company with a branch set up here in Seoul around 4 years ago. And we are a global HR consulting company helping global companies based here in Korea with their performance management and also talent acquisition recruiting. This seminar series is in fact one that we run regularly, have done for a number of years, but it's the first time due to the current situation that we're running it online via webinar. So it's a very warm welcome to everybody. As I mentioned before, we do have Q&A running throughout the session, so please do ask your questions there and chat along the side as well. By way of a brief introduction about Eric, our principal consultant, he is originally coming from Hong Kong and first came to Korea in 2010. He's been working with RDI for a little over 4 years now and heads up our professional development consulting services. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Eric. Take it away.
Thank you, Gordon. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us for this webinar session, which is the one of our 3 webinars that we have planned for this month of March. And just a little bit about myself, what I do. As Gordon briefly introduced, I'm from Hong Kong, and a lot of what I do is to help organizations work better through better leadership development and through better organization culture. And without further ado, let me just briefly bring you through the agenda for today's session. So as Gordon mentioned, Q&A, anytime feel free to use the Q&A box. If you have any questions, we'll try to answer them. Gordon can try to answer them right away if he have the capacity. If not, then we will try to answer them through Q&A later in the session. Or we'll make sure that if you leave your name, then we'll make sure that we'll come back to you with the answer. Just wanted to check in terms of technology, which is something that we'll talk about when it comes to remote work. Can everybody hear me okay? if you can let me know through the chat there is any sort of sound or visual interference, then we'll make sure that we can fix it right away at any time. Okay, that's you, Gordon, because you connected through an audio. Did you call in? Let me kick you out. Okay. Anyways, so yeah. So I'm glad to know that everybody can hear me and see me well. So agenda for today: how to manage remote teams. A couple of things, because we don't have a lot of time. We have about roughly an hour. So 3 topics that I will briefly guide you through within this webinar, through some of the experience that I have when I'm working in a regional team, when I have to manage a team within the Asia region, and also through some of the work that we have done with RDI within the past 3 years. First thing we're going to talk about is how do you manage productivity when it comes to remote managing. One of the issues that a lot of managers told us that's quite difficult when I don't see somebody working. Are they really working? Bit of a philosophical question, but we can solve that, right? It's something that can be done. And the second part of this webinar is when it comes to communication and interaction with your team. How can you make the most out of the interaction when you're managing remotely? And how can you make sure that you're communicating them effectively as well as efficiently? And finally, a little bit on technology, because like Gordon introduced, we are not a technological, we're not an IT company, but we will try to give you some ideas on what are some of the technology out there that could help your life easier when it comes to managing remote team. There are some really good stuff right there. For example, the one that we're using right now is very convenient. A video too, but I'll give you some recommendations. And again, IT a lot of the time is based on your organization's policy, so I'll leave you to it, but I will give you some general ideas on technology. So productivities, communications, and technology, those are the 3 main topics that we will discuss upon. But first thing first, though, I would like to start a poll, and just to see what's going on within your world of work, right? Because of what's happening in the within the world right now with this issue. So I'm going to launch a poll. You should see it on your screen right now. So the question is, are you working remotely right now as of today? And so I'll close the poll once we have enough participation. And you should be able to see the result once I close it. I'll give you about 30 seconds to do it. Okay, I think most of you have voted. I'll give you 10 more seconds. Okay. Okay, so let me share the result with you within this group right now. So I see that 75% of you are currently working remotely or managing teams remotely, obviously due to the current environment, what's happening. And no, but there are some 25% of you are planning in the near future. And basically, this is a topic that is on everybody's mind right now. So interesting enough, when it comes to remote working, a lot of people think that it is a very, very serious topic, things that it's a completely new type of managing a practice. But interestingly enough, in the book Remote, written by 2 experts on remote working, Jason Fried and David Hansen, they actually talked about that. They actually argue that if you have ever used a service, for example, if you use a law firm that is external, or you use a vendor, or you use a supplier, or just any other general service, even they went as far as if you have ever collaborated with another department within the same organization, then you have somehow, some way managed remote work before. So it's not that much of a far concept when it comes to remote work, right? So they even raise example of, for example, if you have been to a bank before, right? If you have used the service of a bank before, you would have expected certain amount of output, service, productivity from the bank, and you would get it without being needing or being have to share an office with them 8 hours plus per day. And today, with the development of technology, sometimes you don't need to see the person face to face to be able to expect certain amount of productivity or outcome from a person without being in without being needing to spend the same physical space with them. So what makes it work, right? So when it comes to remote managing, we find out that certain things needs to happen. Certain things makes it a successful relationship when it comes to remote managing. Two factors really, right? Technology is just a small part of it, but one part of it is the outcome. So let's say the same as you're using any external vendors, or same when you're working or collaborating with a team from another department or from another country, from another geographical location. One thing that commonly happens when a successful remote work relationship have is the outcome is always quite explicitly aligned and agreed upon. Both the manager and the team member have very misunderstanding or misalignment when it comes to what is expected of them at the end of the day. And the second thing is, which I will share with you with quite an interesting example later on, is when it comes to the delivering, or when it comes to the work itself, the progress from 0 to 100, let's say that's a journey. And the progress usually are quite well measured and is quite explicitly informed, shared to all relevant stakeholders. So that's regarding the outcome when it comes to a successful remote work arrangement. Now the second thing is the interaction, is the communication that happens when it comes to doing remote work. So two things, quality over quantities. That is absolutely important, right? When you have a remote work, more time spent with that person doesn't necessarily mean that the right kind of interaction is happening. And when I talk about the right kind of interaction, specific type of interaction designed for specific purpose and specific times. You can't, the difference between working remotely and working in the same physical space is you can't just turn around and say, hey, Steve, how's that report going? You can't do that anymore because person is not there anymore, right? So how you conduct your interactions, you have to really take a conscientious choice when it comes to making the interaction, and also the interaction have to be very purposeful. So outcome and interactions are two of the key elements when it comes to remote working. And so let's go into the part of outcome, right? So what is outcome? One of the things that remote managers worry a lot about is how do I make sure that person is working? Or how can I make sure that things is the right thing is happening when it comes to remote working? So when it comes to an organization, so this is usually how it looks like, right? When it comes to work or things that needs to get done in a company, in an organization, in a large size or small size. So you have your organizational objectives, something that is usually accountable to the chief executive or the leadership teams, right? They're accountable for those objectives. And then further on, those objectives will be broken down, cascaded into departmental or functional objectives, which are usually accountable by the department heads or executives, right? And once they have the departmental objectives, then they will be broken down and cascaded into team objectives, right? Team objectives are accountable by team leaders, uh, and team leaders will then share those objectives and cascade them down into the individual objectives that individual team members are accountable for, things that they need to be working for, working towards uh, when it comes to the business. So when it comes to remote working, one thing that one important question that all teams should have, they really need to ask, is this one simple question when it comes to all of these objectives. What does good look like? When it's all said and done, when all your objectives has been achieved, what does it look like? What will you see? What are some of the numbers? What are some of the things that can be measured? What will change, right? So this is really important when it comes to all organization, and it becomes extremely important when it comes to remote working, because if you don't know what good looks like, then you can't measure it. If you can't measure it, then you can't track it. If you can't track it, then you don't know what's going on, because you're no longer sharing the same space and you can't see what's happening. And again, the debate is on throughout all organization. Just because you see a person working, does that mean that person is working? I think some research was being done in a large organization in the US, where they actually measured the bandwidth of internet being used within the office. And what happened is they find out that a large part of that bandwidth is being spent on a site called youtube.com. You might have heard of it. So why are there so much bandwidth spent on youtube.com? You be the judge of that, right? And this is all happening within the office. So again, if you don't measure objectives, if you don't know what they look like, then you don't know if your people are working or not, right? So, and this become very, very important when it comes to remote working. Because if you don't measure it, you can't track it. If you can't track it, you can't manage it remotely. So how do you track it, right? So so some of the main key differences between a regular sharing office space tracking versus online tracking is a little bit like this. Oh, so by the way, this is an example that I want to share with you. This is a really, really good example on how do you track something that's untrackable sometimes. Let me just annotate this. Spotlight. So you see the screen, this is what happened when you order Domino pizza online. This is quite an interesting example when it comes to remote working, because you don't see the kitchen, you don't see any of the employees until the delivery person press your doorbell, you open the door, and then you see the workers, right? So this is a good example of remote working in the most simplest sense. So you see so this is a tracker that they have on their website. So what are some of the things that you see, right? So you see there's a very, very explicitly agreed upon when it comes to deliverable. 30 minutes, you'll get it. Your order details. This is exactly what you order, and this is exactly what you get. You even have a feedback system, right? This is all very, very transparent. If they're not doing well, you can let them know right away. But when it comes to tracking, I want you guys to pay attention to this bar right here, right? Bar right here. Oh, again, yeah. Also, your delivery time. What is the estimate time of arrival of your pizza? Is right here. So from order place, there's a bar. So order place, that's the first bar that light up. So when they're preparing and when they finish preparing, this another part will lit up as well, right? When they're baking, it will also lit up. So when they're boxing, they're lit up, right? So when they're delivering, this part will be going according to the progress. So throughout this pizza project, every milestone has been very, very explicitly communicated to the customer, to the person who needs to know it. The exact detail of what need to be delivered, what good looks like. This is what good looks like, right? A pizza delivered at this time, that's what good looks like. It's all been very, very clearly communicated, and at every single stages, it has been clearly tracked and inform to the person who needs this pizza, right? So same thing when it comes to tracking your remote work, right? Same thing when it comes to managing your remote work. This is what you need when it comes to remote work, right? So you need to transfer those objectives into this pizza tracker. Uh, how do you do that, right? And what's the difference when it comes to regular office remote working and non-remote working? So let's say this is a piece of work that your team member is working towards, right? So it could be a project, it could be an objective that is has been assigned to this person, or could be a customer, could be an account. So what you need to do is again ask the question: what good looks like when it comes to this specific milestone, specific things that will be achieved when it comes to these particular objectives, right? So usually a lot of the time, company have that, right? You have your KPI, you have your personal objectives that are usually tracked quite well. So the main difference when it comes to remote working is because you don't see that person every day now. So you have to make a slight adjustment to do that. A slight adjustment is you have to zoom in to a little bit closer when it comes to those milestones and objectives. You have to zoom in and again ask that question, what good looks like. But instead of looking at the milestone, then you need to have a conversation with your team, with your team member on what does weekly progression, what does that look like after a week when progress is being done. And once you've done that, even because now that you're not seeing your team member on a daily basis now, so you need to even ask them, so what does daily progression look like? What is so at the end of today, what does progression looks like when it comes to achieving this project, or when it comes to achieving this particular objectives, right? So daily progression needs to have a conversation, because so this is the daily progression is how you be able to track that your your team member is doing the right work when it comes to remote working. So you might say, oh, daily progression, is that too much? Isn't that over managing to check on my employees every single day? Would that drive my employee crazy? Like if I constantly checking on what are they doing every day, every day, every day, is that something that is a little bit too over managing? I would say no, it's not over managing, right? So the difference between daily progression, over managing, when it comes to online, is you need to decide not how often you're checking in terms of progression, but how in depth you need to check in when it comes to progression. And that can be helped with technology. So let me show you something, right? So daily progression, is it over managing? Am I going to drive my employee crazy? So you need to apply a little bit of situational leadership in this particular situation. So when it comes to the daily progressions, how in depth, right? So how in depth, what I mean when I mean how in depth, that means right here, this part, right? This part. So your progression check could be as simple as a text message and say, hey, how's today going? Are we doing all right? To the full depth, where you would say, let's set up a meeting. Please present what you have done today. Now that's really, really in depth, right? That's really, really checking your employee when it comes to like making sure they are doing what they're supposed to be doing on a daily basis. But you have to do it because that's the way to ensure that what they're doing is on track. So how do you decide, right? So these are the things that you need to look into when it comes to deciding how in depth do you want to do your daily progression check. Uh, Competency, right? Their past record, have they consistently deliver when it comes to this particular task? Do they have the skill set to do it? Have they proven that they can deliver in this particular scenario, this particular set of tasks, right? Uh, Also, that's something that you should know as a manager, right? There's stuff that you should be monitoring, whether you're working remote or not already. And the second part is the commitment, right? So this is a little bit of situational leadership. Commitment is a little bit of the softer side of leadership here. When it comes to their motivation, are they motivated to do it? How much do they want to do it? And also their confidence, right? How much confidence do they have when it comes to doing this particular task? So these are things that you should be paying attention to as a leader. How you do it, we can talk about that later when it comes to one-on-one, right? So once you have decided that, so if you think that they have the right competency and they also have the right kind of commitment to do this particular task, then all you need to do when it comes to daily progression check is just a simple text message or just a simple call to make sure that things are on track. If not, then maybe you need to spend a little bit more time to make sure that things are being done on track, right? So you need to make the judgment call when it comes to particular tasks and then when it comes to particular employee to decide how in-depth a progression check is needed when it comes to remote working and a daily progression. So I would say that is the main difference when it comes to remote working and checking on your employee. Daily progression check, absolutely must for your benefit, for the team's benefit, and for the individual's benefit as well. Moving on, so outcome, right? So progression check. So when should progression check happen and how should it happen? Do I have a poll? Not yet. So interaction. So when it comes to checking itself, the interaction comes into play. Like what type of interaction do you have with your team, and how do you do it? And what kind of technology should you be using, right? So let's get into that right now. So when it comes to interaction, right, quality over quantity. You don't need to be, if you can check in with a team member with a text message, then you don't need to call them, right? If that serves the purpose, if it's quality, then it's much better than spending a call or 30 minutes of talking that doesn't serve the purpose. Again, specific type for specific time, like what type for what time. So I'm gonna borrow a meeting framework. By the way, if you don't think you're having good meetings in your team, there's a very good book that I would like to recommend. I'm going to type that onto chat right now. The book name is Death by Meeting. So it's a really good book when it comes to conducting meeting. And this is, I borrow some part of it in this particular remote working interaction part, but I also make some slight change to it because I realize that sometimes meetings are conducted differently when it comes to remotely. And also, when it comes to conducting meetings in Korea, in Asia, you need to take a different approach to ensure that there is full participation sometimes. And so this is what I would share with you when it comes to meeting. But first, let me just get it. So the name of the book is Death by Meeting. It's a really good book. It's really easy read. He does it in a way that is like telling a story. So I highly recommend you guys to check it out if you don't think your meeting is going as good as you want it to be. But anyway, let's talk about remote working and meetings and interactions, right? So the first kind of meeting is the daily progression that I talked about. This is your daily check-in, right? So daily check-in. So daily check-in, if you're not doing it, I highly recommend that you would do it. So there's a question from what is Alex? Hey Alex, name of the author. Name of the author is Patrick Lencioni. And let me see if I can find a link on Amazon and share to you right now. That's the beauty of webinar. My meeting. That's the first one. Here you go. Hey, yep, that's a link to Amazon. I should charge him commission, but anyway. So the first type of meetings I'm going to talk about when it comes to remote working is your daily check-in, right? Daily check-ins are important to keep team member aligned. So this is ideally the kind of meeting that it could be a video call, it could be an audio call. It shouldn't last more than 5 to 10 minutes. It could even be text-based. If your teams are competent enough, if they are good at what they're doing, if you can use a text-based check-in for that as well. And Slack is a tool that I'll introduce to you later in a moment. It's quite good at that when it comes to check-in. So purpose of this meeting is really to just a daily progression update. Key thing is there to inform. It's there to make sure that everybody is on the same page, everybody knows what's happening within the team. And so then if they can know what's happening, then collaboration could potentially happen. Try not to get blocked down into a discussion. Try to keep it on a purely informed basis, right? Try to have it at the beginning of the day. And do not be afraid to park items that need further discussion, right? Don't be afraid to say, oh, hold on, Gordon, let's park that in a separate meeting, but let's get on so then everybody would know what's happening, so everybody can go on and get to work, right? So this is what a daily check-in is, right? To make sure that everybody has a sense of what's happening when it comes to daily progression. Video call, audio call is recommended. Text-based update can be done as well. Do it in a team, right? Shouldn't take more than 10 to 15 minutes. So everybody would get a chance to share what they're working on, how things are going, and what's need to happen today. So that's the daily check-in. One thing that I added on to the framework is your one-on-one individual with your team member, which I recommend you to have it if every day if you can do it, because remote working usually is every week, but remote working I recommend every day. So the difference between the progress checking and one-on-one with your team member is that they drive the agenda in this type of one-on-one meeting. I will give you a framework called ABCD in the next slides, but your role as a team leader is to listen and coach them, to ask the right questions, and if you can, remove obstacle if you can do it right. So the purpose of this is to make sure that your individual man, this is what we call a pulse checking, making sure that they're okay when they are working at home, making sure that mentally they are at the right place. Make sure that they are getting the support that they need, especially in times like this when it comes to remote working. 15 to 60 minutes. Again, they drive the agenda. You have to give them time to prepare the agenda, obviously. I'll give you a template for that. Tools, I would much prefer video call because this will involve a little bit of coaching. This will involve you need to use your emotional intelligence quite a bit. And I believe that being able to see that person face to face is probably more effective than audio. But if audio is, if video is not an option, audio is fine too. Usually I would recommend doing this face to face, but given the topic is remote working, then and also based on the current situation, then I would say video call is my preferred way of doing a one-on-one with individual. Let me give you a quick poll. Launch that poll. Are you having one-on-one with your individual team member regularly? I'll give you about a minute to answer that. Once you have enough once we have enough respond, then I'll publish the poll. It's anonymous, as you can know, so be honest. It's not a test. Yeah, Alex, absolutely. I think video call is quite important as well. It really does help when it comes to, especially when it comes to one-on-one. But let's have a look at the poll here. And polling. share results. So the results right here. So quite a three-way split. Sometimes 33% say yes, and some of you say no. But when it comes to remote work, I think that's absolutely important, that you need to have that quite regularly, and you need to have the discipline to have that, because you simply don't see that person face to face anymore on a regular basis. And a lot of the time, as leaders, as managers, you guys pick up on things, right? Pick up on body language to know how the employee is doing. And when you remove that when it comes to remote work, so this is your opportunity. This is your window to make sure that you are able to make sure that your team member is operating operating on a level mentally in the right place. So thank you for participating. So let me just stop that, get rid of that. So this is a template that you can use. Just something that we've been using quite successfully when it comes to team members to drive the agenda. So you would give them time to prepare this, A, B, C, D, relatively simple. So you can just get them before the meeting, set up an agenda, explain to them what it is, and then get them to prepare this, right? Achievement is what they have done. They feel they have done well in the past week or on the day yesterday, because now we're checking daily now, right? So what went well, right? What are some of the things that they have done well? Again, you don't have to limit it to professional achievements, right? Maybe for a person working from home, it's like, oh, you know what? Yesterday I managed to get some quality time with my kids. That could be an achievement all by itself. Let them drive the agenda, right? And B is the benefits, right? So what's benefits from it, right? So for them, it may be, I managed to spend some quality time with my kids in the morning. That really put my mind at ease, so I can complete that project right on time, right? Again, let them drive the topic, right? Listen. So what is the benefit from the achievement? Concern, again, doesn't have to be purely about professional work concern, right? It could be about personal concern, because sometimes as a leader, you can help. Do next is between this particular one-on-one and next time, what needs to happen. Do next could be things that individual need to do themselves, or it could be things that you as a manager, as a leader, can do, right? So these are stuff that you can hold each other accountable and help them when it comes to the one-on-one that you talk about. Especially important when it comes to remote meetings, remote management. How are we doing for time? Okay. Moving on to other meetings. So this is the weekly technical for the team. Most team have it is to track the weekly progression, how things has been going within the week. Does there need to be some adjustment? Does there need to be some things that needs to get done because there are some obstacle? Key things is agenda discipline. Like set the agenda in advance, give people time to think about the agenda, and then try to not talk about things too strategic, focus on the past week. And for this type of meeting, I would definitely recommend video call, face-to-face call if you can, because anything more than 30 to 20 minutes, I'd say a face-to-face call is probably recommended. Because why? Let me show you a meme that I saw recently. Because a lot of the time, this is what happened when you have a conference call. Sometimes if you don't show the screen, and I think Gordon and I have been guilty of that sometimes as well when it comes to conference call. I mean, I truly believe that our body language shape who we are and shape how we think and shape how we behave and how we I hope nobody's, I don't mind if you want to get comfy, that's comfy, right? I'm not expecting any work out of you at the end of this session, so that's okay. But I truly believe that body language shape how we behave and shape how we think and how we do stuff. So I absolutely believe that video call when it comes to, especially comes to team meetings, is necessary, right? And of course, you can have your monthly strategic meetings too, that should still go on. Key things, right, when it comes to in Asian culture or culture that doesn't speak up openly so easy, make sure that you give people time to think, give them pre-work, so then they do it. So then in the meeting they have something to say. A lot of the time, leaders don't have agenda, and then people get caught on the spot, and then they don't have anything to say, or they just agree with everything that you say because they just want to get out of the situation. So I cannot emphasize this enough. Like, set agenda, give people time to think. The second reason to set agenda is because sometimes if you set the agenda, maybe you realize that you didn't actually need a meeting at all. Maybe all those questions could have been answered. To give an example, at a meeting with I schedule a meeting with a client, schedule a 1 hour meeting, and then I send him an email and say, so these are the things that I will cover. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask? And then he come back with a list of questions, and then I come back answering all the questions. So the call, instead of being 1 hour, it become 10 minutes, and all the topics were discussed. So everybody was much better off. He was actually surprised. Oh yeah, so yeah, I guess we're done. So yeah, I guess we're done. Good. So send agendas, man. Especially when it comes to remote meetings. Don't put people on the spot. It's not fair, and maybe that meeting is not necessary at all. A video conference, face to face, if you can have it, because it is a bit of a longer meetings. Again, let's see how the situation develop when it comes to the virus, right? That's my meme. Ad hoc pop-up, those who happened. Again, topic focus, right? Remember, clock is ticking when it comes to conference call and when it comes to video conference, right? Focus on the topic, ask first, schedule later. Because when they're working remotely, maybe they're working on something else. So if you don't ask first, if you just schedule in a meeting without asking them, then you might be breaking the flow of work, and it might put them in a bad state of mind when it comes to working. Again, agenda and pre-work, right? Give them time to think. So that's it when it comes to outcome and interactions, right? Again, remember, outcome need to be quite explicitly agreed upon, need to be trackable, need to be measurable, measure the progress every day. How in-depth you want to measure it, depending on the person. It could be as simple as a text message to a more in-depth call, conference, explanation, presentation. Interaction, quality over quantity, right? Make sure that you're spending the time effectively when it comes to online interaction. Moving on, so some recommendations, right? A quick recommendation. If you haven't done it, conduct a monthly strategic, because things are changing quite rapidly right now, right? With the COVID-19 situation going on right now. So have a strategic meeting to talk about how you plan to, how do you want to have an agreement on how you want to remote work with your team. What kind of communication channel will you use? What kind of core work hour? So core work hour, I know some company that have a core work hour. For example, one have a work hours that is between 10:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. in this situation, because school is out, so kids have to stay at home. So they wanted to give the employee some time to make sure that the kids get their breakfast, they've been homeschooled. So then they make sure that as long as there's a call hour of 10:30 to 4:30, as long as you're there at your desk responsive, then any other time you're okay, right? Again, agree upon that, right? Different organizations have different needs. Remote work does not have to be all in. It's not okay, we are going remote work now, everybody get out of the office tomorrow, right? Do you have room for try and error? Maybe ask 2 or 3 team members to work from home 2 days a week. See how it works out. Ask them for feedback. What did they like about it? What worked well? What didn't work too well? Adjust, right? And then through that, then what are some of the things that you can make sure through that you will know how to really adjust remote work for your team. Have a discussion with your team when it comes to milestone and how do you want to track progress. For individual team member, have an agreement, right? And I emphasize the word agreement. It has to be an agreement on how you want to track progress daily. What need to be tracked, how you're going to do it, and why you want to do it that way. Have one-on-ones. That is so important, right? Because you no longer seeing that person face to face on a daily basis anymore. Have some rule of engagement when it comes to time, schedule, and core work hours, right? And you as a manager, you as a leader, one thing that's so important when it comes to remote work, a lot of the time why remote work arrangement breakdown is because the leader is not role modeling the discipline. You can't set meetings for, let's say you can't have a, okay team, we're going to have a 5-minute catch up every morning, and then you're not turning up for those meetings. Bad role modeling, right? You need to have the discipline as a leader yourself, right? If you are going to, if you want them to just give update on those meetings, don't be the one that who is droning on and on about problems, right? Have the self-awareness and the discipline to do this. And the second thing is you got to respect boundaries and diversity. Some people just work differently. And if you have a set of agreements, rule of engagement, try to respect that, right? Because you need those boundaries to make sure that remote working works. And you need to respect those boundaries to make sure that this arrangement is successful and effective. So technology, let me just quickly go through technology before we go to Q&A. So let me answer the elephant in the room. Should I use KakaoTalk to constantly contact my people all the time? I usually don't recommend KakaoTalk. First thing first is because it's not encrypted end-to-end if you use the default chat mode. So what that means is what you put on there is not secure. If you have sensitive information, unless you use the secret chat room mode, then all of your chat is not secured. It's not encrypted default Kakao. And second reason behind that is I would much rather, because a lot of Koreans, because a lot of people actually, people working in Korea, not just Korean, are using KakaoTalk for personal purpose. I much rather separate work and home when it comes to tools. And because there are much better alternative out there, right? Telegram, WhatsApp is totally encrypted, and Slack is something that is quite useful when it comes to contacting your team in a fast-paced environment, when it comes to quick responsive environment. What is Slack? So I will share, oh, by the way, we will share this video recording with you. And also we will share the PowerPoint, of course. By the end of the week, we need to do some editing. So when it comes to apps there is so many things out there and to help you remote work, right? So when it comes to collaboration, there's a lot of work, application out there could help you collaborate better. Gordon, you use Airtable as well yourself to track progress when we use. And Zoom is something they're using. I know some organizations use GoToMeeting. Slack is a day-to-day chatter. It's quite useful for a daily catch-up because simply is how quickly responsive it is, and also because you can set up different channel for different topic, for different project to do catch-up. I'll show you a screenshot later. Productivity, if you really need to track how your employees are spending your time, there are tools out there to track how much time are they spending on the computer, what application are they spending it on, and when they even literally when they close the screen, then they would know that you would know that they closed a word processor screen. If you really need that, then I suppose there are options out there for you as well. Again, a lot of these IT technology application will depending on your organization's ID policy. So I will simply just put this out there, and you can check it out yourself. Slack is something that's particularly interesting and useful as a replacement for Kakao Talk, because as you can see, so this is what a daily catch up looks like, right? So in a particular tab. So marketing, you see here, marketing. So marketing, so literally this is the team leader asking, hi Brandon, how's it going with the creative for the fall campaign? So this is literally a progress check, right? And then this is the person answering it through. And this is quite open. So this is the whole marketing team basically doing a daily progression check via text basis. And because you can use rich media, they can immediately upload stuff. So it saves you an email. So basically that's what Slack is. I think it's free until a certain amount of capacity. So for small teams, it's actually quite useful. And it's mobile, mobile iOS and Android both have app as well. And you can, one good thing I like Slack is you can hashtag things, so that makes finding things much very easy. When it comes to text communication, don't be shy to use emoticon and emoji, because a lot of the time feelings cannot be transferred through text itself. So I do highly recommend it to use, if you have to use text as a communication tool, I highly recommend team leaders, team members to use emojicon and as well, because it does help when it comes to communication, communicating remotely. So that's what we talked about today. So when it comes to productivity, tracking process, interaction, communications, and we make some recommendations on technology as well. Notice that you guys haven't posed any question on Q&A. Feel free to do that now. We are going to open the session for Q&A. Avoid putting it on the chat when it comes to Q&A, because what we are going to do is we're going to save the Q&A and then we're going to share that with you after the session. And if you overload that with the chat, then there's going to be a lot of interference on that. So pose your question to the question and answer now, and Gordon and I will try to answer them today. If not, then we'll answer them in another time.
While people are thinking about their questions, perhaps we can actually share one of the questions that got sent in advance of the session. One of the participants sent us an email with quite an interesting question, which was how to actually share kind of news which is actually quite a serious issue. So some kind of announcement that could be a tough topic when it comes to remote teams. Any best practice for how to communicate those kind of things?
I think tough messages are usually done much better face to face. If we, I don't, because he didn't specific say how large is the population. So I would try to, if it's a small population, then I would try to do things face to face through individual call is possible. And I think there's a tool that you can use. Loom is something that you use, right, Gordon?
Yes.
Loom is something that you can explain Loom, right?
Yeah, so the benefit of trying to achieve more of a personal interaction by using video, Loom is loom.com, check it out. It's a way to basically leave a video voicemail. So rather than just giving an audio voicemail that somebody might not necessarily catch your entire meaning, Loom allows you to record a short video message. It's free to use. And perhaps if you want to address those kind of questions or tough messages, tough topics that you, through scheduling, are not able to do in the same time, could be a good way to try to approach those kind of topics.
And is there a limit on the capacity when it comes to video messaging and the amount of audiences that you can share with?
Well, it's actually all saved in the cloud. So you actually, every video you create creates a hyperlink, which could be shared. So if you're wanting to actually kind of broadcast to your team or to your organization a short video message, which is not, doesn't require you to have a full kind of tech setup with expensive camera, or trying to send huge video files around your organization and crash your email system, then it can be a really good way to give a status update or that kind of news announcement to a large number of people. All right. Well, Eric, it seems that you must have answered everybody's questions and covered off all the topics that people had when it comes to managing remote teams. So perhaps we can maybe just
Wait a
let
minute. We have a question.
people know about the upcoming.
We have a question coming through. So, but meanwhile, you can I can let you
go
know.
to the next slide. Yeah.
So okay, so the message, the question.
Eric, you've muted yourself.
Okay, so one question that came through now, so from Alex. So how do you keep motivation at the same level as normal working condition? Now that's a good. So this is as a worker or as a leader. So I'll say as a leader that you really need to pay attention during those one-on-one that you have with your team members, to really talk to them when it comes to finding out what's holding them back when it comes to work, or are there any concern that they're going through. And you really need to pay close attention. That's why I really recommend one-on-one in a video face-to-face setting. And through that, then you'll be able to understand what's holding them back, and to keep motivation is you need to celebrate success, right? So that is why during those during those daily progression meeting is important to realize that when progression is being made, then you need to recognize things have made progression. You need to quite clearly reward verbally or give them some gift via Kakao Talk or through online gift certificate, for an example, to keep motivation up, to know that their progress is being seen. And
I'll field this next question, which has just come in, which is any way to check on team members are actually working and not doing personal stuff, except the daily check-in meetings. I think the easy thing there to do is to have clearly defined the milestones. If you know what the expected progress is on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, then you're going to know quite clearly how people's progress is and what they're achieving. If you've mutually agreed those milestones and they are the right ones for the business, then in that sense, all objectives will have been completed. If that means that person is doing their work in the middle of the night because it suits them, then that's perhaps the beauty of having remote teams, that people have flexibility to work when and how they want, as long as they're still getting everything achieved done according to mutually agreed objectives.
I think it's, even when you are working in the same office, it's quite difficult to say that none of your employees are doing personal stuff while they're in the office, right? So as Gordon say, it's important to stick to the productivity part, stick to the objectives part, the milestone. As long as they are being achieved, then I think that will be important, right? So Alex, I have another question. He say not everybody is as autonomous and not the same as home distraction. So how do you keep yourself focused, right? So that's a good question for people working from home. So I get distracted very, very easily as well myself. And the way that I do it is I through trial and error, though, trial and error, that I have figured out a method that works for me. So I have a timer I have two timers on my computers, on my workstation. One is 25 minutes and one is 10 minutes. So the 25 minutes is my work timer. Doesn't mean that I only work 25 minutes a day. Gordon, relax. So, so what that means is I work 25 minutes, and once that timer is up, then I'll take a 10-minute break, and I'll activate that 10-minute clock. And once that 10-minute break is done, then I'll activate that 25 minutes, and I'll work for another 25 minutes. And then once that timer is done, then I'll take another 25 minutes. And I do that on a 3 hours interval. So once I've done that for 3 hours, then I take a 30-minute break. So this is called the Pomodoro method to help people working from home to focus. Now, now understand that everybody's different when it comes to focus and energy spent. So I figured out 25 minutes is my optimal through try and error. So 30 minutes, then I start losing focus. I start not being as useful or as creative or as productive. So this is the way that I keep myself focused, is to set short sprint, 25 minute, 10 minute, 25 minute, 10 minute, 25 minute, 10 minute sprint. So that I find that particularly useful, but again, everybody's different, right? And as I say, that's why sometimes you have to respect that diversity when it comes to managing remote work. Some people can focus for a longer time, but they need longer breaks. Some people can focus at a shorter time period, but they need shorter breaks in between. And yes, Gordon.
Shall we move to the last final slide? We're going to let people know about the...
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you for joining this webinar, and thank you for staying with us. So just to let you know that we have more planned out for this month of March. On the 26th, which is a Thursday, we have another webinar conducted by Cynthia, more on the market environment today, right now in Korea, and how does that impact your operational strategy and HR strategy. Next week on the 31st of March, the final day of March, we have another webinar focusing on talent management, conducted by Gordon Dudley himself, on how to recruit the best candidate in 2020. What are some of the things that in this particular environment that you could do to ensure that you can attract the best type of candidates? What essential skills your recruiter you need to have when it comes to making sure that you'll be able to capture the best candidate in 2020. And so that is what's gonna happen within this month. I'm sharing the link with you right now in chat. If you haven't signed up, please do that. And thank you very much. So I'm gonna stop the recording right now. Thank you for joining the webinar. I'm looking forward to see you in future webinar by RDI as well.
Thank you to everybody who attended today. Thank you to Eric for leading the session. And it would be absolutely great if you could do us the tiny favor of completing the exit survey as you leave this Zoom webinar. Thank you and have a great day.